Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to your community group lesson for February 19th, or the week of February 19th for Wednesday night, folks. But really glad that we're doing our second week of getting together and just talking about this text. And we're kicking off our new series this week called Come to Jesus. And this whole series is based around the Gospel of John. And so, anyway, we're trying to dive into the first chapter of the Gospel of John this week, and this is an extremely thick, like theologically thick, robust chapter of the Bible. So if you were to run down any rabbit hole that you were to find within this chapter, your community group could last for hours. So we're trying to make sure that you're not going to be stuck in here too long, because we want you to come back to community group next week. But all that being said, in my message this week, we're talking about overall the idea of coming to Jesus. And so, Pastor Ace, I'd like for you to read John 1 through 5, and just to get us rolling here.
Mm-hmm. It says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of man. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it."
Yeah. John the Apostle, who also wrote, in addition to the Gospel of John, 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, he wrote Revelation. He eventually was exiled to the island of Patmos. By the way, most of us spend a lot of money to go to an island. Whenever we go to an island, this was not one of those resort situations. This was more of an Alcatraz situation where he went to an island and was stuck away. And so there's a little bit of foreshadowing that you can read into the text here and there within this. But when it says that in the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God, he was with God in the beginning. All things were created through him. Apart from him, not one thing was created that had been created. This idea of Jesus coming to us, and then we in turn come to Jesus. And so there's a reciprocation that we need to think about. Most of you watching this video right now have come to Jesus at some point in your life. However, when we come to Jesus Christ, it can be easy for us to coast in our walk with him. And so what I want to encourage you to do today at the outset of this community group lesson is just to ponder your heart and think through, have I really been drawing to Jesus as of late in my life? Am I coasting through my walk with God, or am I coming to Jesus day in and day out? I'm interested to hear your thoughts, Ace, when it comes specifically to the beginning part of John 1, when it talks about God the Creator. From your perspective, dealing with a lot of teenagers, what are some various angles of the beginning of mankind that you're hearing about, whether it's Big Bang or creation by some sort of deity, whether it's the one true God or whatever? What are teenagers talking about today? And then I'll address some from a more adult perspective as well. But anyway, what are you hearing about that?
Well, there's a lot of different theories that are out there, but as you said yourself, one of the most well known is the Big Bang theory. There's a theory that everything was created from a vacuum, not an explosion, because they're like, well, the explosion size of a pen cap doesn't make any sense. So maybe there was a vacuum that created everything, and it just goes off into this billions of years worth of processing to come to what we have now today, which spawned from a single cell organism. This idea in and of itself completely leaves out the possibility for there to be a God.
Are you seeing is that being taught a lot amongst younger people in particular?
And it's also being blended with the Bible. You know, a lot of young people are trying to understand
Theistic evolution.
Yeah, so you know, a lot of young people are trying to understand. Well, the Bible says 6 days. You know, God created everything and rested. Maybe that wasn't a literal 6 days.
Yeah,
Maybe that was billions of years that we would,
I think, by the way, that's important for us to clarify. Here at Church of the Highlands, we teach and we believe in a 7 actually, 24-hour literal days of creation. Okay, you might say, well, where do you get that? That's a whole other conversation that we can have. I'm sure that we will have at some point. I encourage you to study Answers in Genesis, and Ken Ham has written thoroughly about that. Actually, I plan on our church taking a group up to northern Kentucky to go see the Ark and all that stuff. I think that would be really fun. We talked about doing that this summer. But, you know, I'm seeing from just trying to talk with people about the Lord amongst adults, that obviously is one of the key question marks that people have when it comes to, are they going to come to Jesus? And what's interesting is that in John 1, at the outset of this gospel message, he's writing with the Holy Spirit writing through John's pen, saying right here, all things were created, John 1:3, all things were created through him, and apart from him not one thing was created that has been created. Fast forwarding a little bit, in my message for this week, there were 2 key things that I was pointing out from this John 1 through 18 text. And we've hit on John 1:3 a little bit, but just moving forward a little bit, where we emphasize particularly John 1:15 in my sermon. But the 2 key things that I pointed out are, 1, no one has ever seen God. Not Moses, not Isaiah. Isaiah was in the throne room of God in the year that King Uzziah died, as Isaiah 6 says. But he never actually saw God. He saw God's cloak. I addressed the possibility of, did Moses see God? No, he saw the afterglow of the presence of God. All that stuff. And then the second point that I drew out is that Jesus at the Father's side has made the Father known. And so you can especially see that including in the creation account, but also in John 1:18, where it says, no one has ever seen God, the one and only Son, who is himself God and is at the Father's side. He has revealed him. And then lastly, there's something really interesting here in John 1:18, in one little sentence, and I broke this down, and I'm giving you this reiteration on purpose because I'm going to expound upon it in a different angle than I did in my sermon. But in John 1:18, which I'm going to read once again, I just read it, I'm going to read it one more time. It says, no one has ever seen God, the one and only Son, who is himself God and is at the Father's side. He has revealed him. And so you can see in this John 1 text that Jesus Christ is eternal, he's personal, he's divine, he's creating, he's life-giving, and he is incarnate. And so all of that being said, about all of those attributes of God that are broken down within that this John 1 text here. And by the way, last week, or if you're watching this in a Wednesday community group, a week and a half ago, I asked the church to read John 1 or John 1 through 4 before coming to church. And you can see why now. You can see why when I encourage you to read a certain text, if you came to church before I preached the John 1 passage and you've read it multiple times, you grasp it better, and that's going to help. It's going to help make sure you're not wasting your time. However, I just pointed out those 7 attributes of Jesus here, which leads into this last thing that I want to point out, and then we're going to be done. These discussion questions. It says, since you have never seen God, how has your idea about him been shaped prior to reading John 1? How has God made himself known, and how can we find out who he is? What was John's purpose? What was he trying to accomplish in writing this gospel? What is the word referred to 3 times in John 1:1? In order to truly be considered a child of God, what must you do? Does it require your own merit? Do you remember when you received Jesus? And if so, please share. So I want to encourage you to make sure that you actually interact with this lesson today. But with all this being said, as we're kind of wrapping up here, Pastor Ace, when I break down John 1 and then see John the Baptist's testimony beginning in the 19th verse, we can see here that every time somebody comes to Jesus, they can see something significantly change in their life. And so as we wrap up, I just want to point out what it says here beginning in John 1:19, where it says, "This was John's testimony when the Jews from Jerusalem sent priests and Levites to ask him, 'Who are you?' And he didn't deny it, but he confessed, 'I'm not the Messiah.' 'What then?' they asked. 'Are you Elijah?' 'I'm not,' he said. 'Are you the prophet?' 'No, I'm not.' So he's saying, 'I'm not the Messiah, I'm not a prophet.' 'Who are you then?' they asked. 'We need to give an answer to those who sent us. Who can you tell us about yourself?' And he said, 'I am a voice of one crying out in the wilderness, make straight the way of the Lord,' just as Isaiah the prophet said. Now they had been sent from the Pharisees, so they asked him, 'Why then do you baptize if you're not the Messiah or Elijah or the prophet?' And he said, 'I baptize with water.' John answered them, 'Someone stands among you, but you don't know him. He is the one coming after me, whose sandal strap I'm not worthy to untie.' All this happened in Bethany across the Jordan from where John was baptizing." And so he wraps up by explaining it's not about him. Actually, in John 3:30, it specifically says, "He must become greater, we must become less." But he's saying, it's not about me. I'm not even worthy to untie Jesus' sandals. But what I do want to communicate is that I am nothing beyond a vessel, because I'm not the Messiah. I'm not a prophet. I am a servant of the living God because I have come to Jesus. So as you have an attitudinal check going into your discussion time of this text, my encouragement for you is to think, do you realize how blessed you are to come to Jesus? Do you think about how you're not even worthy to untie Jesus' sandals, but he loves you so much that he came to you, and in turn, he wants you to come back to him. And so Jesus has gone 99% of the way, and he's waiting for you to take that 1% step forward so that you can meet together, because he's knocking on the door of your heart, and he's waiting for you to let him in. You have any additional thoughts you want to say before we're done?
You nailed it, my brother.
Awesome. Well, enjoy your discussion time. Thanks for coming to Community Group today.